Rumpole, and the Unhelpful Confession. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Old Bailey Stories. Before you get comfortable, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you like what I am doing here. There is no point in encouraging the wrong sort of enthusiasm. I have known it in juries, in judges, and in my own clerk, Henry, when he thinks a case will end tidily. Nothing ends tidily, not in chambers, not at home, and certainly not at the Old Bailey. Tell us where you are, and what time it is, in the comments. I am always touched by the notion that, while I am being harried through draughty corridors and lectured by the bench, some distant listener is making tea, missing a train, or hiding from their own domestic tyrant. We are all, in one way or another, in the dock. Tonight's tale concerns a modern disease which has spread through police stations like damp through old brickwork. It is the helpful confession, the kind you make when you are tired, decent, anxious to go home, and surrounded by people who keep asking questions that only have one acceptable answer. It is not the confession of melodrama, with sobs and shaking hands. It is the confession of courtesy, and courtesy, in my experience, is frequently fatal. Now, switch off the lights, pour a modest glass of Chateau Thames Embankment, and let us see what the Old Bailey has to say tonight. Chapter 1. The Telephone That Ate Lunch. The trouble began, as trouble so often does, with a ringing telephone and the faint smell of gravy. At Froxbury Mansions the radiators wheeze like elderly witnesses, and the corridors are forever trying to remember whether they are meant to be warm. I had achieved a certain comfort in my armchair, with the evening paper folded in, the optimistic way one folds a newspaper when one intends to read it rather than use it as a shield. She Who Must Be Obeyed was in the kitchen, conducting one of her campaigns against flavour. "Rumpole," came her voice, sharp as a gavel, "if you are going to Pomeroy's again, you can stop pretending you have work. Your son telephoned." That was the moment I knew my lunch was already lost. The mention of my son is to domestic peace what a match is to a petrol station. "What did he want?" I asked, with the caution of a man approaching a hostile witness. "He is thinking of moving again," said she who must be obeyed. "He is unhappy." "Unhappy is his natural state," I suggested. "Some men are born to it." "Do not be cruel," she said. "He is sensitive." "So is a nettle," I replied, which did not assist the atmosphere. The telephone rang again, as if to support her view that the world exists to interrupt my digestion. I rose, took it, and heard Henry Trench breathing on the line as though he had been pursued by creditors. "Mr. Rumpole, sir," he began, in the tone of a man delivering news of plague, "there is a situation. A lady from the station. She has come to 3 Equity Court, and she is, well, she is insisting." "Henry," I said, "no good has ever followed the phrase 'a lady from the station,' unless it is the buffet." "It is not the buffet, sir," Henry said. "It is a police station." I might have refused. I might have pretended I was dead. I might even have attempted a cheerful evening at home, which is the most dangerous form of self-deception known to man. But Henry had the quality of panic that suggests one will be punished later if one resists now. "Tell her I will meet her at Holborn," I said, "and tell her she is depriving me of claret." "You are always thinking of claret," said she who must be obeyed from the kitchen, proving she could hear even when the door was closed. "Of course," I called back. "It is my only defence against the human voice." I found the lady from the station outside the entrance, a detective sergeant with the brisk look of a person who has never owned a pair of slippers. She introduced herself with a name that sounded like it had been stamped on a form. "Mr. Rumpole," she said, "your client asked for a solicitor. He asked for you." "How flattering," I said. "I should warn you I am not a solicitor. I am a barrister. We come in at the last moment when things are most expensive." She did not smile. Police humour is a private dialect. She led me inside. The station smelled of disinfectant, damp wool, and the faint despair of those who have been left on plastic chairs too long. In a small interview room, Under a strip light, which had the charm of an operating theatre, sat Terry Biddle. He was not what one would call a picturesque criminal. He had the face of a man who apologizes when other people tread on his foot. He wore a bus driver's jacket, and had a split lip that looked as though it had been acquired honestly. "Mr. Biddle," I said, taking the seat beside him as if we were attending a tedious dinner party, "I am Horace Rumpole. I defend. I do not confess." "I did not mean to confess," he said at once, and his voice had the weary softness of night work. "Then you have already said something hopeful," I replied. "Tell me what has happened, and do not embroider. Judges hate embroidery. They prefer bare fabric and gilt." He looked at the table, then at his hands. "I finished my shift," he said. "Late. I went to get something to eat. There's that kebab shop by Holborn. I was just standing there. Then this bloke comes out shouting. He's like he owns the pavement." "A common condition in the city," I said. "He started on me," Terry went on, saying I'd splashed him, or bumped him, or something. I said I was sorry. I did not even know I had done it. Then he shoved me. I told him to leave it. Then he hit me. I tried to push him off. That's all. "And then," I said, "the police arrived and offered you the opportunity of making a helpful confession." He swallowed. "They kept saying, did I hit him? I said I might have pushed him. I was tired. I wanted to go home. They said, just tell us and it will be over." The detective sergeant made a tiny sound, like a drawer being closed. "Mr. Rumpole," she said, "your client admitted assault. The complainant has a broken nose. This is assault occasioning actual bodily harm." "Ah," I said, "a splendid phrase. It makes a man sound like a medieval weapon." Terry's eyes lifted. "I did not break his nose," he said. "I did not punch him. He hit me first." "Names?" I said. "Who is the complainant?" The detective sergeant looked faintly pleased, as though she had been waiting to say it. "Mr. Jason Markham," she said. "He is a trader. He has been in the papers, some charity event. He's known." "Known," I murmured. "Yes, like a bad smell in the lift." Terry looked embarrassed. "He was saying everyone would hear about it," he said. "He said I'd lose my job. I told him I'd just drive the night bus." I leaned back. A night bus driver with a split lip before the alleged assault, a complainant with a broken nose and a bruised reputation, a police interview that had the whiff of haste. It had all the ingredients of a conviction, which is to say, none of the ingredients of justice. "Did you ask for a solicitor during the interview?" I asked. Terry hesitated, as if the question were a trap, which in the hands of police officers it often is. "I said I wanted legal advice," he said. "They said it would take ages. They said, let's just get this over with." The detective sergeant's mouth tightened. "That is not what was said," she began. "Detective sergeant," I said gently, "I am not cross-examining you. Yet." I stood. "I want the custody record," I said. "I want the interview tape. I want the charge sheet. I want everything, including the bit where you tell him to hurry up and confess so you can go home." "That is not fair," she said. "Fairness," I replied, "is a concept which will be examined in due course." Back in the corridor, Henry appeared as if summoned by the smell of trouble. He had somehow arrived at the station, clutching a file which looked too thin to contain a man's future. "Mr. Rumpole, sir," he whispered. "Claude Erskine-Brown has heard. He says it is an open and shut case." "Claude," I said, "would call the Grand Canyon a small crack. Where is the brief?" Henry offered me the file. It had the instructing solicitor's name on the front, in the neat hand that always suggests a man who has never been arrested. "Listed at the Old Bailey," Henry said, as though those words were a death sentence. "Everything is listed at the Old Bailey," I replied. "It is the one place in London where nobody ever cancels anything." I opened the file and saw in black and white, the prosecution's idea of truth. A statement from Mr. Jason Markham, full of outrage and self-pity, a police summary which translated Terry's weary caution into certainty, and the delicious phrase, "The defendant made a clear admission." I closed the file. "Hurry back to Chambers," I told Henry. "Telephone the bus company. Ask if their vehicles have cameras. Do not use the word cameras. Say closed-circuit television, and sound as if you know what it means. Then ring Bonnie Bernard, and tell him I require the tape of the interview. If he sighs, tell him I am sighing louder." Henry nodded, already sweating. "And Mr. Rumpole, sir," he said. "She who must be obeyed telephoned. She said if you are late again, there will be no pudding." The law, I reflected, has many sanctions. Some are written in statute, some are enforced at Froxbury Mansions. As I stepped out into the rain-streaked evening, I decided that Terry Biddle's helpful confession would not be the last word spoken in this case. Confessions rarely are. They are merely the first draft of a story, written by exhausted men and edited by the police. And I, after all, have always preferred to be the editor. Chapter 2. 3 Equity Court and the Art of Delay. The next morning at Froxbury Mansions began with porridge and accusation, which is the traditional English breakfast for a married man. She who must be obeyed stood over the saucepan as if she were conducting a small inquiry into my character. The porridge moved with the reluctance of a defendant answering questions without counsel. "You came in late," she said. "I came in victorious," I corrected. "You came in smelling of damp overcoats and cheap wine," she said. "And do not pretend you were at the station out of public spirit. You only go to police stations when they insist, or when you think the case will be interesting." "Justice," I said, "is an interest of mine." "Justice," she replied, "is something you talk about when you are trying to avoid mending the sitting-room curtain." I took my bowl of porridge and my newspaper, both of which had been prepared as weapons. "And your son telephoned again," she added. "Did he announce he was unhappy in a different key?" "He says he may move nearer to us," she said, in the tone of a woman describing a flood. I felt a tightening in my stomach that had nothing to do with the porridge. "Nearer," I repeated. "London is already too near." "He is your son," said she, who must be obeyed. "He needs stability." "So do courts," I said. "Yet we drag innocent people into them daily." I escaped to 3 Equity Court with a briefcase, a raincoat, and the sense that my domestic life was in danger of becoming a charge of its own. Henry was waiting for me in Chambers, as though he had slept under the desk. His hair had the air of a man who has been shaken by events and by his own conscience. "Mr. Rumpole, sir," he said. "I have been on the telephone since early." "That is your function in life, Henry," I said. "To telephone, to worry, and to keep the lights on while I save civilization." "I spoke to the bus company," he said at once. "There is closed-circuit television. But they say they do not keep it. It is overwritten." "Overwritten," I murmured. "A modern miracle. Like confession, it appears when convenient and vanishes when inconvenient. They also said," Henry went on, "that Mr. Biddle has had no trouble before. He is well liked. He is in the Union." "Every decent man is in the Union," I said, "and every indecent man pretends not to understand what it does." Henry produced a sheet of paper. "This is the solicitor," he said. "Mr. Bernard. He is coming at 10. "Bonnie Bernard," I said. "A solicitor who thinks a sigh is an argument. Bring him in when he arrives. And, Henry, have you obtained the interview tape?" Henry looked pained. "I asked," he said. "The police said it takes time. They said it has to be processed." "Processed," I said, "as if truth were a packet of biscuits." At that moment Claude Erskine-Brown drifted past the open door, wearing the expression of a man who believes the world should make way for his cufflinks. "Ah, Rumpole," he said, with the airy cheerfulness of a hangman at a wedding, I hear you have taken on another of your hopeless causes. A bus driver, is it? Assault, confession, quite straightforward. Claude, I said, the only straightforward thing about this case is your enthusiasm for conviction. I am merely stating the position, Claude replied. The police have a confession. The complainant is, if I may say so, rather a distinguished person. Distinguished by what? I asked. A loud voice and a tender nose? Claude gave a small, superior laugh. You always take this romantic view of the criminal classes, he said. The jury will not. And I should warn you, the judge will not. I have never relied on judges, I said. I rely on juries. They still contain a few people who recognize bullying when they see it. Claude smoothed his gown as if it were part of his argument. You will do as you like, of course, he said. You always do. But do not complain when the inevitable happens. When the inevitable happens, I said, Claude, I shall complain more loudly than ever. It is my contribution to English public life. He drifted away, pleased with himself, as though he had already delivered a neat little closing speech. Phillida was in her room, reading papers with the calm concentration of a woman who can separate fact from nonsense without raising her voice. She looked up when I appeared. I heard, she said, assault, confession. Not a confession, I said, a surrender. The police do not always know the difference. Phillida gave me the look she reserves for my poetic moods. Are you going to fight it? She asked. I always fight it, I said. If I did not, I would have to go home early. Then you need disclosure, she said. The tape, the custody record, anything about legal advice. And I need something else, I said. I need time. Which is the one thing the court refuses to grant when it would do the most good. Bonnie Bernard arrived at 10, carrying a file and a face full of caution. He had the air of a man who has spent his life urging clients to accept reality, and who regards me as an unpleasant exception. Mr. Rumpole, he began, I have told him to consider a plea. You have told him to consider defeat, I said. It is a common solicitor's hobby. Bernard sat down, sighed, and opened his file with a motion that suggested fatigue. This is not about defeat, he said. It is about risk. The confession is damaging. Only if you read it the way the police wrote it, I said, and only if the tape supports it. Bernard raised his eyebrows. The tape may not help, he said. He has admitted pushing the man. He has admitted being tired, I replied. There is a difference. I took the papers from him and read the summary again. It was the familiar prose of police certainty. Questions were shortened. Answers were expanded. Doubt had been tidied away as if it were untidy hair. What about the custody record, I asked. Bernard flipped to a page. He asked for legal advice, he said, but the officer notes that he was content to continue. Content, I repeated. A man can be content to continue when he does not know he is being driven into a ditch. Henry hovered at the door, unable to resist the scent of litigation. Mr. Rumpole, sir, he said. There is a telephone call from the bus company. I took it in Henry's room, where the walls are lined with files and fear. A man introduced himself as the depot manager. He sounded as though he had been trained to apologize to angry passengers and then become angry himself. We do not keep footage long, he said. Company policy. But there was a copy made. A copy, I said. By whom? A saint? There was an incident report, he said. Mr. Biddle came in after his shift. Split lip. One of the inspectors made a copy for the file. And where is that file? I asked. The depot manager hesitated. It is with the security office, he said, and they do not like releasing it. Tell them, I said, that if they do not release it, they may find themselves subpoenaed, and tell them that I am not a man to be delayed. I have been delayed by professionals for years, and I am practiced. He promised to see what could be done, which is the phrase people use when they intend to do nothing until threatened. I returned to Bernard. "You see," I said, "even modern machines can be coaxed into telling the truth. Sometimes they are more reliable than human beings." Bernard looked unconvinced. "And what about the complainant?" he asked. "Mr. Markham is insisting this was unprovoked. He is talking about the press." "Of course he is," I said. "Some men bleed and complain. Others complain and bleed. The important question is which he did first." By mid-afternoon I had a message from the police. The interview tape could be collected the next day. The custody record, they said, was available if we applied properly. Properly, in police vocabulary, means after the case has been decided. I needed air, and the only air in Lincoln's Inn is to be found at Pomeroy's. Pomeroy's wine bar is not a place where truth is manufactured, but it is often a place where it is admitted. A man may deny everything in a police station and then confess his life story over a glass of claret. I found my usual corner, ordered a modest glass of Chateau Thames Embankment, and attempted to look like a barrister who had the situation under control. A voice behind me said, "Rumpole." It belonged to a man I recognized at once, not because he was famous, but because he had the posture of someone who knows where the exits are. A former policeman, now in some private employment, the sort of man who can tell you the time without looking at a watch. "Mr. Travers," I said, "what brings you into this temple of low ambition?" He smiled, and it was the smile of a man who has seen too much to be impressed by any of it. "I heard you were defending a bus driver," he said, "against a city lad with a broken nose." "News travels," I said, "even without evidence." "It travels because Markham wants it to," Travers replied. "He has been making calls. He wants the bus company to keep quiet." My claret tasted suddenly less cheerful. "Why would he want that?" I asked. Travers leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "Because there was another man there," he said. "Someone Markham would rather not mention, and if there is footage, it might show it." I sat very still. In court, the turning point often comes from a witness who talks too much. In life, it sometimes comes from a man who talks just enough. "And who," I asked, "was this other man?" Travers took a sip of his drink, as if to give the name time to arrive. "That," he said, "is what you should find out before the Old Bailey does." And I, with the claret warming my stubborn heart, began to suspect that Terry Biddle's unhelpful confession was only the beginning of the unhelpful truth. Chapter 3. The Tape That Spoke for the Police. There are moments in a barrister's life when he knows he is about to hear the truth. It is usually spoken by someone else. Henry met me at Chambers with an expression of pure administrative misery. "It is ready, Mr. Rumpole, sir," he said. "The interview tape. The police say we can collect it, provided we sign." "The police," I said, "would make a man sign for his own mother if they could staple a form to her." Phillida appeared in the doorway of her room, calm and exact. "Do not forget the custody record," she said. "They always forget the custody record." "They do not forget it," I corrected. "They simply hope you will." Henry fluttered behind me as I put on my gown and wig, which had once belonged, I was told, to a Chief Justice of Tonga. "It is the only item of clothing I own with a history more respectable than mine." "Mr. Rumpole, sir," Henry said, "if you are going to the station, do not antagonize them." "Henry," I replied, "antagonizing them is the only reason to go." At the police station I was received with the kind of patience reserved for persistent insects. The detective sergeant who had summoned me produced a cassette in a plastic sleeve, as if handing over a dangerous substance. "There," she said, "your tape." "Thank you," I said. "And the custody record?" She blinked, and then went to fetch an officer whose job, I suspected, was to deny things. He arrived with the air of a man who had practiced looking surprised. His name badge said he was Sergeant something or other. His face said he was Sergeant Not My Fault. "The custody record is in the file," he said. "You will get it in due course." "I have it in due course already," I replied. "I require it now." He smiled thinly. "This is not a library, Mr. Rumpole." "No," I said. "A library has rules about silence." I took the cassette and asked, in the gentlest tone I could manage, "When Mr. Biddle asked for a solicitor, what did you tell him?" The sergeant's eyes grew polite. "He did not ask," he said. "He did," I replied. "He told me he did." "That is his recollection," the sergeant said. "Not ours." "Recollection," I murmured, "is a delicate flower. It blooms according to the season." He took a step closer. "You have what you need," he said. I looked at him. "What I need," I said, "is for you to remember that the law has teeth." That was perhaps unwise, but one does not go to a police station for wisdom. Back at 3 Equity Court, Henry had borrowed a small tape player from somewhere in the building. It looked as if it had once been used to teach French verbs. We sat in his room, the cassette between us like an exhibit from an unpleasant museum. I pressed play. The voices emerged, tinny and confident. Terry sounded tired. The police officer sounded energetic in the way some men do when they are building a case. The officer's questions came quickly, tidy and suggestive. "So you hit him?" "No." I pushed him off. "So you accept you struck him?" "I did not strike him. I was trying to get away." "And you broke his nose?" "I do not know about his nose." The officer continued, patient as a spider. "So you might have punched him?" "I might have pushed him." "He was on me." "So that is a yes to punching." "That is not what I said." It went on like that. The questions did the work, the answers were dragged behind them. Then I heard it. "I want legal advice," Terry said. There was a short pause, a cough, a shuffle of paper. "We can sort that later," the officer said. "Let's just get this over with." Henry's face went pale, as if he had heard a judge pronounce sentence. Phillida, who had come in without a sound, listened, with her head slightly tilted. "That," she said quietly, "is not clever." "It is more than not clever," I replied. "It is useful." Henry reached for a notepad, like a man clutching a life-belt. "Mr. Rumpole, sir," he said, "should we complain?" "Henry," I said, "we shall complain until the walls sweat." Bonnie Bernard arrived with his sigh already loaded. "I told you," he began. "Confession." "Not confession," I said. "A guided tour." I rewound the tape and played the crucial part again. Bernard frowned, then looked irritated, which is the nearest he comes to passion. "They should have stopped," he admitted. "They should have called me," I said. "But then, if the police called defense counsel whenever they ought, the prisons would stand empty and the Home Office would be upset." Phillida spoke with her usual precision. "We must make a formal application," she said, "for the custody record and for any notes of the interview. And for the tape to be transcribed properly," I added, "before Claude waves it at the jury like a flag." Claude, as if summoned by his own name, appeared in the corridor outside, talking loudly about some committee and the decline of standards. His voice, on certain days, can be heard as far away as the Strand. I went out to intercept him. "Claude," I said, "you will enjoy this." He looked mildly alarmed, which is his natural response to my cheerfulness. "What is it, Rumpole?" "A little line on the tape," I said, "the sort of line that makes a judge frown." Claude smiled in the patient way he uses on juries. "You are always optimistic," he said. "Judges frown at you as a matter of principle." "Perhaps," I said, "but they do not like police officers discouraging legal advice. Even judges have standards. Low ones, but standards." Claude's smile slipped. "You are suggesting the confession is unreliable," he said. "I am suggesting," I replied, that it is unhelpful, which is the only kind I ever deal with. Claude retreated with the look of a man who has swallowed something sour. That afternoon Henry telephoned the bus depot again, this time with my words in his ear and a new firmness in his voice. He put the receiver down and looked at me as if he had discovered courage. "They will let us see the copy," he said. "Not take it, see it." "Splendid," I replied. "We shall gaze upon it reverently, like worshippers before an altar." The depot was a concrete box full of tired men and notices. Every wall seemed to carry instructions about what one must not do. It reminded me of marriage. A security officer met us in a small office that smelled of stale tea. He had a moustache that suggested he had once enjoyed authority. "You are the barrister," he said, as if it were a bad habit. "I am the defendant's barrister," I replied. "The difference matters." He produced a tape and placed it in a machine. The picture flickered into life. There was Terry Biddle, stepping down from his bus at the end of his shift. He moved slowly, like a man whose bones have been argued with by gravity. He turned his head toward the camera, and I saw it clearly, the split lip already there. Henry leaned forward, holding his breath. Then another image. Terry at a stop, waiting. A few passengers drifting away. It was late. The street had that London emptiness which always feels temporary. The angle was wrong for the kebab shop. The camera did not show the pavement outside, but it showed something else. A man approached Terry. Not Markham, not yet. A taller figure, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark coat. He moved with purpose. The man spoke to Terry. Terry lifted his hands, palms out, in that universal gesture of a decent man trying to calm a bully. Then the figure stepped close, too close. There was a movement, quick and ugly. Terry's head jerked. The figure walked away as if nothing had happened. I felt Henry watching me, waiting for a verdict. "Who is that?" Henry whispered. The security officer shrugged. "No idea," he said. "Camera does not pick up faces well at night." "Of course it does not," I said. "It would be unreasonable to expect machinery to recognize the person who started the trouble." On the screen, Markham appeared a few minutes later, strutting into view with that peculiar confidence some men have when they expect the world to apologize. He spoke to Terry. His mouth moved. His hands moved. Terry did not move much at all. Then the picture jumped. The angle shifted as the bus pulled away, taking the camera's interest with it. "That is all," the security officer said. "It is enough," I replied, "because it was enough to prove one thing. Terry's injury came before the so-called assault, and it offered another, more interesting question. If Markham did not start it, and Terry did not finish it, then who was the broad-shouldered stranger with the purposeful walk?" Back at Chambers, I found myself thinking of Travers at Pomeroy's. There was another man there, he had said. Someone Markham would rather not mention. I poured myself a glass of claret in Henry's room, which is against the rules, but the rules were made by people who do not defend at the Old Bailey. "Henry," I said, "find out who that man could be. Ask the depot. Ask the inspectors. Ask anyone who watches bus stops for a living." Henry nodded, scribbling. "And I added, "will pay another visit to Pomeroy's. If the truth is going to crawl out, it may prefer a bar to a witness box." As I gathered my coat, the telephone rang. Henry answered, listened, and then covered the mouthpiece. "It is she who must be obeyed," he whispered. "Of course it is," I said. "The prosecution never rests." I took the receiver. "Rumpole," came Hilda's voice. "Your son is coming for supper tomorrow. Do not be late." I looked at the cassette on Henry's desk, at the flickering memory of a stranger's shadow, and at the thin file which contained Terry Biddle's future. "Very well," I said. "I shall try not to be late for anything." And I knew, with the certainty of a man who has seen too many timetables, that I would fail. Chapter 4. The Helpful Stranger. Pomeroy's is a place where men go to be forgiven, not by God, but by their own consciences. The claret helps. So does the fact that nobody asks you to explain yourself in complete sentences. I arrived early, which impressed nobody, and took my usual corner. The barman poured a modest glass of Chateau Thames Embankment with the resigned care of a man serving medicine. I had not finished my first sip before Travers appeared. He moved without fuss, as if the air made room for him. He sat down opposite me with the calm of someone who has watched too many fights to enjoy them. "You listened to what I said," he observed. "I listened," I replied, "because you did not sound like Henry, and you did not sound like the police." It was refreshing. Travers gave a brief smile. "Markham is making noise," he said. "He wants it settled. He wants your man to plead." "Every bully wants a plea," I said. "It saves them from questions." "And he wants the bus company to keep quiet," Travers added. "About the footage." I set down my glass. "I have seen the footage," I said. "It shows my client with a split lip before he ever meets Markham. It shows a stranger. It does not show Markham's nose." Travers looked at me, and I could see he was weighing how much truth to spend. "The stranger is not a stranger," he said at last. "Not to Markham." "Then he has a name," I said. "He has a job," Travers corrected. "Private security. The sort of man you hire when you want someone to stand near you and look as if he is thinking." "Thinking what?" I asked. "Thinking that you might be persuaded," Travers replied. "I had met many persuasive men in my life. They tend to have thick necks and thin patience." "And what," I said, "is this persuasive gentleman called?" Travers hesitated, then leaned closer. "Latchford," he said. "Derek Latchford. Used to do a bit of work for clubs. Then he discovered the city." "London," I murmured, "is always improving itself." Travers took a sip of his drink. "Markham has been in trouble," he said. "Not with the police, with his own people. There are questions about money, about deals, about who knew what." I held up a hand. "Do not bring me a conspiracy," I said. "I can barely manage a timetable. Give me something I can put to a jury." Travers nodded, as if that was the only sensible request. "Latchford was seen with Markham that night," he said. "Before the shouting, before the news. Markham does not want him mentioned. So Latchford hits my client," I said, "and Markham breaks his own nose on the truth?" Travers did not laugh. "I do not know who broke the nose," he said, "but I know Markham wants a story when no one asks about Latchford." "That," I said, "is usually the sign that Latchford should be asked about." I left Pomeroy's with the kind of warmth only claret and stubbornness can provide. In the street outside, London was grey, rain-smeared, and indifferent. A bus sighed past, full of faces that looked like defendants waiting for sentence. At Chambers, Henry was waiting, with a telephone pressed to his ear, and panic in his eyes. "Mr. Rumpole, sir," he mouthed, as if the words could be swallowed. I took the receiver. A man's voice said, "Mr. Rumpole, this is Mr. Markham's solicitor." Solitars always speak as though they are reading from a leaflet. "My client is distressed," the voice continued. "He has suffered injury. He is a public figure. He is willing to consider a sensible resolution." "Sensible," I said, "is a word people use when they mean convenient." "There is also the matter of costs," the solicitor added. "There is always the matter of costs," I replied. "It is your religion." The solicitor cleared his throat. "My client has been told that there is a recording from the bus company. He considers it private property. He expects it will not be circulated." "Your client," I said, "should be careful what he expects. It leads to disappointment." A pause followed. Then the voice became colder. "If you pursue this," the solicitor said, "there may be attention. The press, perhaps." "Splendid," I replied. They can sit with a jury and learn something. He ended the call without farewell. Solicitors have their own forms of discourtesy. Henry looked at me, aghast. "Mr. Rumpole, sir," he said, "they are threatening us with publicity." "They are threatening me with journalism," I said. "A lesser offence than contempt, but still unpleasant." I went into Phillida's room and found her reading, as usual, as though facts were the only things worth noticing. "Markham's solicitor has telephoned," I said. "He is distressed and public." "That sounds like a condition," she said. "He mentions the press," I went on. "And he's oddly interested in the bus company's recording." Phillida's pen paused. "That is interesting," she said. "Why would an innocent complainant care about the recording?" "Because it contains an unhelpful stranger," I said. I told her Travers's name. "Latchford." Phillida listened without expression, which is how she shows she is thinking hard. "Then we need to place Latchford at the scene," she said. "And we need to know what he did." "We already know what he did," I replied. "He hit my client. At least, his arm did." "We need someone to say it," Phillida replied. "A witness, or a document, something a judge will accept." "A judge," I said, "accepts very little, except lunch." Henry returned with a scrap of paper. "Mr. Rumpole, sir," he said, "I asked around. The depot inspector who copied the tape is called Mr. Jarvis. He is willing to speak to you, but he says he does not want trouble." "No one wants trouble," I said. "Trouble insists. We met Jarvis in a cafe near the inn, the kind of place where the tea is strong and the chairs punish you for sitting." Jarvis was a thin man with the worried eyes of someone who has spent years watching buses and expecting something to go wrong. "I only copied it for the incident file," he said at once. "Because Mr. Biddle came in with a split lip." He filled in the form. He said he had been hit at the stop. "Did he say by whom?" I asked. Jarvis shook his head. "He said a man," he replied. "A big bloke. Dark coat." He said the man was with another one. "Smart. Mouthy. Like a city type." "Markham?" I said. Jarvis nodded reluctantly. "I saw Markham later," he admitted. "Not at the depot. On the news. Charity dinner. I said to my wife, 'That's the bloke.'" "And the big one?" I asked. Jarvis hesitated. "I have seen him," he said. "Around. Not on the buses. Outside places. Clubs. He stands about, like he is paid to stand." That was as close as I was likely to get to a description of Latchford from a man who did not wish to be punched by him. "Did you tell the police about the copy?" I asked. Jarvis looked miserable. "No," he said. "They did not ask. They only asked about Mr. Biddle. They said he confessed." I felt the familiar irritation rise. "The police can be thorough, but only in one direction." "Jarvis," I said, "will you make a statement about the split lip, about what Mr. Biddle told you, about the copy?" Jarvis stared into his tea as if it might rescue him. "I do not want to go to court," he said. "Neither do I," replied. "But I go anyway. It is my career." He gave a small, defeated nod. "All right," he said. "But if that big bloke comes looking for me, I will deny everything." "Do not deny," I said. "Say you cannot recall. It is a more respected art." As I left the cafe, Henry was already making notes, and I was already hearing she who must be obeyed's voice in my mind, announcing supper with Nick as if it were a sentence of imprisonment. At home that evening, Hilda had arranged the sitting-room with the stiff perfection of a woman preparing for inspection. A good chair for Nick, a bad chair for me. The ashtray removed, as if to suggest my cigar habit was a rumour. "You will behave," she said. "I always behave," I replied. "I simply do it in my own way." Nick arrived precisely on time, which is a form of aggression. He kissed his mother, nodded to me, and looked around as though Froxbury Mansions might be improved by legislation. "Father," he began, "I have been thinking." "I have been dreading," I replied. Hilda gave me a warning look. Nick sat. He spoke about moving, about a larger flat, about being nearer, about the difficulties of modern life. He did not mention his own contribution to those difficulties. I listened, nodding as though I were taking instructions, and thinking instead of a dark coat at a bus stop, of a split lip, of a confession that had been coaxed like a child into saying sorry. When Nick paused for breath, I said, "I am defending a night bus driver." Nick blinked, as if I had changed the subject without permission. "Is he guilty?" he asked, in the tone of a man discussing a policy document. "He is tired," I said, "which is often treated as guilt." Hilda intervened with the authority of a judge ending a cross-examination. "Supper," she announced. And as we ate, I realized that my life contained two kinds of interrogation. One took place under strip lights in police stations. The other took place under Hilda's lamp at Froxbury Mansions. Both were designed to produce a helpful confession. I intended to give neither. When I went to bed, I found myself repeating Wordsworth in the dark, not for poetry, but for defense. "The world is too much with us," I murmured. "In my experience, so are helpful strangers." Chapter 5. The Application for the Truth. The Old Bailey is built for certainty. It has stone walls, high ceilings, and an air of moral confidence which would be admirable if it were not so often mistaken. I went there for a mention, which is what the court calls a conversation, in which nothing is decided except what will be decided later. Mention hearings are designed to make the defense feel guilty for existing. Henry walked beside me with a file clutched to his chest, as though it contained his heart and might be stolen. "Mr. Rumpole, sir," he whispered. "The list is busy. They will want to move quickly." "Henry," I said, "speed is for guilty pleas and buses. Trials require time." We found our way to the corridor outside the court, where barristers stand in little groups like pigeons waiting for crumbs. Claude Erskine-Brown was there, immaculate, calm, and already wearing the expression of a man who had won. "Rumpole," he said, as if greeting an unfortunate relative, "still determined to make a meal of it?" "I am determined," I replied, "to prevent you making a meal of my client." Claude's smile did not shift. "You have a confession," he said softly. "Your man admitted he struck Markham." "My man admitted he might have pushed someone off him," I said. "There is a difference, Claude. It is the difference between accident and invention." Claude's eyebrows rose. "Are you suggesting police officers invent?" he asked, in the tone of a man who has never been invented himself. "I am suggesting," I said, "that they tidy. And sometimes they tidy until the truth has gone out with the rubbish." A court usher called our case, and we went in. The judge sat with that controlled impatience which judges cultivate as a substitute for sympathy. He was not a villain. He was simply a man who had seen too many defendants and too few decent lunches. He looked down at me. "Mr. Rumpole," he said, "assault occasioning actual bodily harm. There is an admission." "There is an interview," I corrected. "And there is an issue about legal advice." The judge's eyes narrowed a fraction. "Is there?" he said. "Yes, my lord," I replied. "My client asked for legal advice. He was discouraged." Claude rose with smooth confidence. "My lord," he said, "the Crown's case is plain. The complainant suffered a broken nose. The defendant accepted he struck him. It is not complicated." "Complication," I said, "is often the court's way of describing fairness." The judge gave a small sigh, as if I were a persistent draught. "What do you want, Mr. Rumpole?" he asked. "Disclosure," I replied. "The custody record, the full notes of the interview, proper transcription, and time." The judge looked at Claude, then back at me. "This is not a fishing expedition," he said. "No, my lord," I agreed. "It is a rescue operation. Claude's mouth tightened. He does not like the defense to sound heroic. The judge leaned forward. "You will make a written application," he said. "I will not have this case delayed without reason. If the defendant is guilty, he should plead." "My lord," I said, "I never advise guilt on the basis of convenience. It is not my habit." "I am aware of your habits," the judge replied. "Some of them are notorious." That was the nearest he came to humor. Outside again, Henry exhaled as though he had been holding his breath since his schooling. "He did not order immediate disclosure," Henry said, disappointed. "He did not order immediate execution either," I replied. "In modern practice, that counts as progress." Claude came up beside us. "You are going to attack the police," he said. "It will not endear you to the bench." "I do not go to the Old Bailey to be endeared," I said. "I go to prevent convictions." Claude gave a small, pained smile. "Your romanticism will be your downfall," he said. "Claude," I replied, "your pomposity will be yours, but it will take longer." Back at 3 Equity Court, Phillida read my notes and listened without interrupting, which is one of her most alarming qualities. "The judge will not enjoy an argument about legal advice," she said at last, "but he may have to hear it." "He will hear it," I replied. "Whether he enjoys it is his problem." Henry arrived with a fresh sheet of paper, his eyes bright with the particular excitement of a clerk who has discovered information. "I found something, Mr. Rumpole, sir," he said. "Henry?" I replied. "When you say you have found something, I begin to fear it will be a bill." "It is not a bill," he said. "It is a name, Derek Latchford. I telephoned some firms. There is a security company that uses him as a contractor. They sometimes do work for city parties and charity dinners." "Charity," I said, "is where the respectable go to behave badly in public." Henry nodded vigorously. "They said he is not on their staff list," he went on, "but they hire him. They said he is effective." "Effective," I repeated. "Another word for frightening." Phillida looked up. "Can you prove he was there?" she asked Henry. Henry's enthusiasm dimmed. "They will not give me anything," he admitted. "They said it was confidential." "Confidential?" I said. "Like the police tape, like Nick's plans, like everything that matters." I asked Henry for the address of the security firm, and went there in the late afternoon, when London wears its tiredest face. The office was above a shop and had a sign that suggested reliability. Signs often do. A receptionist with perfect hair and a bored expression asked what I wanted. "I want to speak to whoever employs Mr. Derek Latchford," I said. "He is not employed here," she replied at once. "He is used," I corrected. "Like a blunt instrument." Her expression did not change. "You will have to write," she said. "I shall," I replied. "But I am here now." A manager appeared. He wore a suit that was meant to inspire confidence, and succeeded only in inspiring suspicion. "Mr. Rumpole," he said, having been told my name as if it were a warning, "we cannot discuss contractors." "You can," I said. "You simply choose not to." He smiled politely. "If you have inquiries," he said, "you should address them to our solicitors." "Splendid," I replied. "Then I shall have a conversation with people who charge money to say no." He shifted. "There is no connection between our firm and this case," he said. "That," I replied, "depends on what your man did at that bus stop." He held his smile. "We know nothing about any bus stop," he said. "Then you have a remarkable ability," I said, "to know nothing quickly." I left without further progress, which is a familiar sensation. The law, like marriage, often proceeds by small defeats. That evening, she who must be obeyed was waiting, with a look of concentrated disapproval and a list of domestic matters designed to crush hope. "You are late," she said. "I was pursuing justice," I replied. "You were pursuing your own stubbornness," she said. "And your son telephoned again." Did he announce he was moving nearer, or merely breathing heavily down the line? "He says he will come at the weekend," she said. "Of course he will," I murmured. "The world is too much with us, and Nick is too much with the world." She fixed me with her eye. "You will be polite," she said. "Do not talk about your cases at the table." "Then what shall I talk about?" I asked. "Curtains?" "Curtains would be an improvement," she replied. Later, in my small study, I listened again to the interview tape. The police officer's voice had the smooth persistence of a man polishing a story until it shines. I wrote out the key words on a sheet of paper, as if they were a line of poetry. "I want legal advice. Let's just get this over with." It was not poetry. It was procedure. And procedure, when it is broken, can save a man. I telephoned Terry Biddle at the modest flat where the bus company had placed him on something called leave, which is what employers call punishment when they are being polite. He answered quickly, as if he had been waiting for a verdict. "Mr. Rumpole," he said, "is it bad?" "It is not good," I replied. "But good is an unreliable friend. Tell me again about the man in the dark coat." Terry hesitated. "I do not know him," he said. "He was just there. He spoke to Markham first, then he came over. He said, 'Keep your mouth shut.' Then he hit me." "Did anyone see?" I asked. "There was a woman," Terry said. "She was waiting for the bus. She looked scared. She walked away." "Describe her," I said. Terry tried, awkwardly. "A coat, a bag, hair, the sort of description that would fit half of London." "Did the police ask about her?" I asked. "No," he replied. "They asked about my fists." I put down the receiver and stared at my notes. A frightened woman at a bus stop, a hired muscle in a dark coat, a complainant with a solicitor who telephones the defense about a private recording, and an interview tape that did the police work for them. We had evidence. We had suspicion. What we did not yet have was a witness who would stand up and say, in simple words, who struck first and why. Without that, Claude would purr about confessions, and the judge would frown, and Terry Biddle would pay for being tired. I poured myself a modest glass of claret, raised it to the empty room, and quoted to no one in particular. "Plain living and high thinking." It sounded admirable. In practice, it requires a witness. Chapter 6. The Witness Who Could Not Recall. It is one of the peculiar habits of London that the people who see everything are the people who want to see nothing at all. You can stand at a bus stop at midnight and observe a small parade of human misery, drunks, lovers, men carrying plastic bags of regret. Yet the moment a punch is thrown, everyone develops an urgent interest in the far distance. Henry arrived at Chambers with a map of the night bus route, which he had obtained from the bus company with the triumph of a man who has discovered a new continent. "I have it, Mr. Rumpole, sir," he said. "The route, the stop, the times." "Excellent," I replied. "Now we must find the woman who disappeared into the London fog." Henry's face grew anxious. "Do we have to go there at night?" he asked. "Henry," I said, "if we want to meet a night bus witness, we must keep night bus hours. Justice is rarely available between 9 and 5. Phillida looked in from her room. "You must be careful," she said. "Do not let this become an adventure." "I do not do adventures," I replied. "I do inquiries with bad lighting." That evening I returned to Froxbury Mansions, to be informed by she who must be obeyed that Nick would arrive on Saturday, whether I liked it or not, which was a form of sentence passed without mitigation. "You will be here," she said. "You will not disappear to Pomeroy's. You will not bring home any clients." "I never bring clients home," I said. "They might meet Nick and lose hope." She gave me a look of slow menace. "You will be civil," she said. "I am always civil," I replied. "I simply do it with sarcasm." At 10 o'clock Henry and I met near Holborn, standing under a street lamp that made us look like suspects. Henry wore a scarf and the expression of a man who has been told to inspect a dangerous exhibit. "This is the stop," he whispered, pointing, as if the pavement might overhear. The kebab shop was still open. Its bright light spilled onto the pavement like confession. Inside, a man wiped the counter with the tired patience of someone who has heard every late-night excuse. I went in, displayed my barrister's smile, and ordered tea, which in such places is a symbolic act of respectability. "I am looking into an incident," I said, when the tea arrived. "A scuffle outside, a few nights ago. A man with a broken nose and a great deal of noise." The proprietor's eyes narrowed slightly. "Police came," he said. "They asked questions. Not much listening." "That," I said, "is a familiar method." He leaned closer. "It was not just two men," he said. "There was another one, big one." He stood behind, like a wall. "A wall," I repeated. "Walls do not usually speak, but they sometimes hit." The man nodded once. "I saw him," he said. "He pushed the bus driver earlier. The driver had blood. Later, the loud man came, shouting. The big one did not like it." Henry's ears had gone pink with attention. "Did you see a woman at the stop?" I asked. "A passenger." She looked frightened. The man frowned, searching his memory. "There was a lady," he said slowly. "She waited for the bus. She had a shopping bag. She looked down, like she did not want to be in London." "Did she get on the bus?" I asked. He shook his head. "No," he said. "She walked away. Fast, like she remembered she forgot something." That, I reflected, is how witnesses behave when they know the world is unkind to the helpful. "What is your name?" I asked him. "Mr. Alpay," he replied. "Mr. Alpay," I said. "If you are willing, I would like a statement." He stiffened at once. "No," he said. "No court, no trouble. I have family. I have license. Police already look." I spread my hands. "I do not want to cause trouble," I said. "I want to prevent it landing on the wrong man." He looked at me for a long moment, then sighed. "You write," he said. I read. Maybe. It was not an embrace of justice, but it was a start. We returned to the bus stop and waited. London at that hour is not silent. It mutters, it rattles, it coughs buses into existence and then swallows them again. Henry huddled beside me. "Mr. Rumpole, sir," he whispered. "What if the woman does not come?" "Then we shall become women," I replied. "We shall walk the route and look frightened." A bus arrived, its lights cutting through the damp air. The driver leaned out. "Night route," he called. I stepped forward. "Do you remember a man called Terry Biddle?" I asked. The driver's face softened. "Terry," he said. "Good bloke. Quiet. Helps with shifts." "Do you remember any woman at this stop," I asked, "who looked as if she wished she were elsewhere?" The driver considered. "There is one," he said. "Regular. Works late. Always carries a bag. Gets off at the station near Bloomsbury." "Her name?" I asked. The driver shook his head. "I only know faces," he said. "Names are for the office." Henry looked ready to cry. "How do we find her?" he murmured. "By being the office," I said. The next day Henry did what Henry does best. He telephoned. He apologized. He hinted at authority. He spoke of court orders in a voice that trembled just enough to sound genuine. By mid-afternoon he had a name. "Miss Havers," he said, reading from his notes. "Miss Jean Havers. She is a clerical worker at a firm near Bloomsbury. She uses that stop late on Thursdays. She complained once about men shouting." "Did she complain to the police?" I asked. Henry hesitated. "To the bus company," he admitted. "The police were not interested. Of course they were not. The police rarely enjoy evidence that does not help the confession." I telephoned Miss Havers myself. She answered in a careful voice, as if she expected the line to be tapped by trouble. Miss Havers, I said, my name is Horace Rumpole. I am a barrister. I defend a man called Terry Biddle. You may have seen something on the night in question. There was a pause, then a small intake of breath. I saw nothing, she said quickly. Miss Havers, I replied, that is a bold statement. Most people see something, they simply do not like remembering it. I cannot help you, she said. I am not asking you to help me, I said. I am asking you to help the truth. The difference is that the truth does not charge fees. Another pause. Then she spoke lower. I do not want my name in court, she said. I do not want to be called a liar. No one calls witnesses liars, I said. They call them mistaken. It is more polite. She gave a small, unhappy laugh. I saw a big man, she said. He hit the bus driver first. The driver did not do anything. Then the loud one came. The loud one was with him. Did you see the loud one get hit? I asked. I saw him stumbling, she said. He stepped back. He hit something. One of those metal posts. He held his face. There was blood. A post? I said. Not a fist? I did not see the bus driver punch him, she whispered. But the police did not ask me that. They did not ask me anything. They did not know about you, I said. They did, she replied. I spoke to an officer. He told me to leave my name and go home. And did you leave your name? I asked. I did, she said. I wrote it on a piece of paper. He put it in his pocket. That sounded like evidence with legs. It can walk away very easily. Miss Havers, I said, will you meet me? Not at court. Not at the station. Somewhere decent. Where? She asked. Pomeroy's, I said. I do not go to wine bars, she replied. No, I said. You go to work, you go home, and you try not to see London. Very well. We will meet at a cafe. Somewhere bright. Brightness frightens liars. She agreed, reluctantly. And I heard fear in her voice, not of me, but of being noticed. When I put down the receiver, I felt the case settle into a shape I recognized. A man had hired help. The help had started the trouble. The loud man had injured himself in the confusion. Then the police had found a tired driver and encouraged a confession, because it is easier than finding the truth. All I needed now was to turn Miss Havers into a witness who would speak. And for that, I would require the Old Bailey's favourite ingredient, courage. At home that night, she who must be obeyed said, Nick is arriving tomorrow. Do not look miserable. I do not look miserable, I replied. I look experienced. She snorted. Try looking grateful, she said. It would be a novelty. I went to bed thinking of Miss Havers, who wished she had seen nothing, and Terry Biddle, who had said too much. I also thought of the metal post, silent and faithful, waiting to be blamed. If I could persuade the court that a post had done more harm than a bus driver, I might yet save my client. But first I had to survive the weekend. Chapter 7. The Domestic Adjournment. Nick arrived on Saturday with a small suitcase and a large sense of entitlement. He kissed she who must be obeyed, as if paying tribute, and then looked at me with the careful politeness of a man greeting a colleague he intends to reorganize. "Father," he said, "you look well." It was the sort of remark one makes to a defendant before sentence. "I look as I always look," I replied, "like a barrister who has survived another week." Hilda's eye warned me at once. She has the gift of silent criticism. I have always suspected she could cross-examine without opening her mouth. Nick went into the sitting-room and began discussing his plans. He spoke of property as if it were a moral issue. He spoke of location as if it were a constitutional right. "I have found a place," he said, "not far from you. It is practical." "Practical," I murmured. like an umbrella in a hurricane. It would mean, Nick went on, that Mother would not have to worry. She worries, I said, because it is her sport. Hilda appeared in the doorway, carrying a tray with tea and the look of a judge who has heard enough. Rumpole, she said, do not start. I have not started, I replied. Nick has started, with property. Nick smiled, as if humour were an item he had studied but never used. I merely want to be nearer family, he said. Family, I said, is a fine word. It is often used to justify invasion. Hilda put the tray down with a little bang, like a gavel. We are going out, she announced. We are visiting friends. You will come, Rumpole. This was said in the same tone in which the court announces, the defendant will attend. I spent the afternoon in a modest flat belonging to people Hilda approves of. They spoke of holidays, children, and the decline of standards. I nodded in the correct places. Nick smiled dutifully. Hilda beamed. I thought of Terry Biddle. At supper, Nick returned to his theme, as relentless as an examining officer. I could help, he said, with things, with arrangements. We have arrangements, I replied. Hilda said, Nick means well. Many disasters begin with that, I said. Nick's expression hardened. Father, he said, you always resist change. Nick, I replied, I resist foolishness. Change is sometimes the same thing. Hilda's eye flashed. Enough, she said. Eat. I ate, which is what a sensible man does when threatened. On Sunday morning, I escaped to chambers under the pretext of urgent work. Hilda did not believe me, but she allowed it. She knows that a man who is forbidden Pomeroy's will only go there more quickly. Henry was in, naturally, because clerks do not seem to have weekends. They have hours of additional anxiety. Mr. Rumpole, sir, he said, Miss Havers has agreed to meet you. Today. 1 o'clock. Cafe near Bloomsbury. Excellent, I said. A bright place for a dark story. Phillida appeared from her room, carrying a file. Be careful with her, she said. Witnesses like that can collapse. Not from weakness, from pressure. I know, I replied. Pressure is the Crown's favourite weapon. It costs nothing, and it bruises easily. The cafe was clean, bright, and full of people who looked as if they had never been arrested. Miss Havers sat by the window, clutching her bag with both hands. She had the neat, cautious look of someone who has learned to take up as little space as possible. I introduced myself again and sat down. Miss Havers, I said, thank you for coming. I should not have, she replied at once. I should have stayed away. That, I said, is what the wrong men hope you will do. Her mouth tightened. I do not want trouble, she said. No one does, I replied, except the trouble. She looked out of the window, as if the street might offer a better answer than I could. I saw the bus driver, she said. He was standing there. He looked tired. He looked like he wanted to be invisible. He is very good at it, I said. Sadly, the police are better. She gave a small, anxious laugh, and then stopped, as if she had surprised herself. There was a big man, she said. He came from nowhere. He spoke to the loud man first. The loud one was dressed smart. He was angry. Then the big one turned and went to the bus driver. He said something. I could not hear. What did you see? I asked. He hit him, she said. And the words came out fast, not hard like a film, hard enough. The bus driver's head went back. Then what? I asked. The loud one came over, she said. He was shouting. He shoved the driver. The driver pushed him off, like he was trying to get away. The loud one stumbled back. He hit the post. I heard the sound. Metal. Then he put his hand to his face, and there was blood. I nodded. And did the bus driver punch him? I asked. No, she said. I did not see that. I did not see fists. I saw him trying to avoid it. I leaned forward, keeping my voice calm. "Miss Havers," I said, "this is important. You are saying the broken nose could have been caused by the post." Her eyes widened. "I did not think about the nose," she said. "I just thought I should go. I should not be here." "And you spoke to the police?" I said. She nodded. "Yes," she said. "I went up to an officer. I told him I saw the big man hit the driver first. I told him about the post. He looked bored. He said he would take my details." "What did you do?" I asked. "I wrote my name," she said, "on a slip. I wrote my number. He put it in his pocket." "Do you remember his name?" I asked. She frowned, trying. "No," she said. "He did not tell me. He had a badge. I did not look properly." "That is what honesty looks like," I said, not remembering what does not matter. Her hands tightened on the bag. "I do not want them to come to my work," she said. "I do not want that big man to find me." "The big man," I said, "is called Derek Latchford." She froze. "How do you know?" she whispered. "I am a barrister," I said. "We know names. It is our chief talent." She swallowed. "I saw him again," she said. "Where?" I asked. "Outside my office," she said, 2 days after. He was across the street, just standing, like he was waiting." "Did he approach you?" I asked. "No," she said. "But he looked at me. I could feel it. I went the long way home." That was not evidence a judge would enjoy, but it was pressure, and it explained her fear. "Miss Havers," I said, "I will ask you for a statement. It will be read. It may be used. If you come to court, the judge will protect you as far as judges protect anyone." She looked at me, and I saw the struggle in her face. Not melodrama. Something smaller. Pride against fear. "I do not like lying," she said. "Then do not," I replied. "Tell the truth, slowly, clearly. And when Claude tries to shake you, remember he is only a man in a wig." She gave a small nod. "All right," she said, "but I want it to be exact." "I adore exactness," I said. "It makes liars sweat." I took out my notebook and wrote her words carefully. I wrote them as she spoke, with no embroidery. A tired driver, a big man, a metal post, a slip of paper that vanished into a pocket. When I left the cafe, I felt lighter, not cheerful. Barristers do not become cheerful on evidence alone, but steadier. At Chambers, Henry read the statement and looked as though he had been handed a life-raft. "This is good, sir," he said. "This is very good." "It is truthful," I replied. "That is rarer." Phillida read it next. She nodded once. "We will serve this," she said, "and we will ask for unused material. The note, the officer, their record of her name. And when they say they have none," I added, "we shall ask why." Henry looked anxious again. "Mr. Rumpole, sir," he said, "if she has been watched, will she be safe?" "No one is safe," I replied, "but she will not be alone." I went home that evening to find Nick installed in the sitting room, explaining to Hilda why modern living requires modern solutions. Hilda listened with the fond approval she usually reserves for shop windows. "Rumpole," she said, "Nick says we should have the bathroom modernized." I stared at her. "The bathroom," I repeated, "is already modern. It has water." Nick smiled. "It is sensible," he said. "It adds value." "Value," I said, "is what you add when you cannot add comfort." Hilda's eye warned me again. I went into my small study, poured myself a modest glass of claret, and looked at Miss Havers's statement. It was a simple thing. A woman at a bus stop, a man in a dark coat, a post made of metal. Sometimes the whole case turns on something silent, and sometimes a witness who does not want to recall becomes the only person who can. Chapter 8. The Note That Went Missing. If you wish to understand the Crown's devotion to paperwork, you should observe its talent for losing the only piece that matters. On Monday morning, Phillida served Miss Havers's statement, Henry served my application for disclosure, and the police served silence. Silence, in their view, is the most reliable form of record-keeping. Claude Erskine Brown telephoned Chambers with the voice of a man offering sympathy while counting the points. "Rumpole," he said, "I gather you have found a nervous lady who thinks she saw something in the dark." "She saw more than your witnesses see in daylight," I replied. Claude gave a light chuckle. "You are building castles on a bus stop," he said. "A confession, a broken nose, an aggrieved complainant. It will be difficult, Claude," I said. "Difficulty is why they allow us to wear wigs. It distracts us from despair." He cleared his throat. "I should warn you," he said, "that the complainant is firm. He insists he was struck." "He may insist," I said. "He may insist until the Post apologizes. It will not make him right." Claude paused. His voice became softer. "There is also," he said, "the matter of your witness, Miss Havers. People can be unreliable when they are frightened." "Yes," I agreed. "People can. So can police officers." Claude ended the call with a polite farewell, the sort of farewell that means he believes he has already won. Henry came into my room immediately, pale and excited. "Mr. Rumpole, sir," he said. "The police have replied." "Have they discovered courtesy?" I asked. "They say," Henry read, "that they have no record of any slip of paper from any witness. They say no such note exists." I took the letter and read it. It was the usual official language, clean, confident, and empty. "No such note exists," I repeated. Phillida came in, took the letter from my hand, and read it with the calm anger of a competent woman. "They are saying she never spoke to them," she said. "They are saying," I replied, "that if she did, they forgot. Forgetting is a professional skill." Henry swallowed. "What do we do?" he asked. "We make a nuisance of ourselves," I said. "It is my trade." Phillida nodded. "We ask for the officer who took the details," she said. "We ask for the pocket notebook. We ask for the record of calls. We ask for everything they will pretend not to have. And we ask for the custody record again," I added, "because they will hope we have grown tired of asking." Henry looked doubtful. "Will the judge make them?" he asked. "The judge," I said, "may not enjoy it. But judges do not enjoy anything except lunch, and they still eat it." That afternoon we were back at the Old Bailey for another mention. The judge sat with his patient impatience, as if he had been promised a quiet life and then discovered barristers. Claude rose first, smooth as ever. "My lord," he said, "the Crown is ready. The complainant is anxious. The defendant has admitted striking him." I stood. "My lord," I said, "the Crown is ready because it does not wish to look. There is a witness, Miss Jean Havers, who gave her details to an officer. The police say the note does not exist." The judge's eyes sharpened a little. "A note," he said. "What note?" "The note containing her name and number," I replied, "which she wrote for an officer after reporting what she saw." Claude spread his hands, as though my argument were a mild embarrassment. "My lord," he said, "this is speculation. If the lady exists, she should have gone to the police properly." "My lord," I said, "she did. She went to an officer. He put her details in his pocket. The pocket appears to have swallowed them." The judge looked annoyed, which was, I felt, progress. "I will not have this turn into an attack on the police," he said. "My lord," I replied, "I am not attacking them. I am asking them to remember." There was a short silence. Then the judge spoke, slowly. "The Crown will make inquiries," he said. "There will be disclosure of any relevant material. The defense will have the custody record and the interview notes. The trial date stands." Claude sat down with a look of injured dignity, as though he had been asked to do work. Outside in the corridor, he approached me. "You are grandstanding," he said. "I am standing," I replied. "The grandeur is entirely mine." He leaned closer. "Your witness will be shredded," he said. "She will not enjoy it." "Claude," I said, "your concern for witnesses is touching. It will not stop me." On the way back to Chambers, Henry received a telephone call which changed the color of his face. He held out the receiver as though it were dangerous. "It is Miss Havers," he whispered. I took it. "Miss Havers?" I said. "How are you?" "I should not have done it," she said, and I could hear her breathing quickly. "I should not have spoken. Someone telephoned me last night." "Who?" I asked. "I do not know," she said. "A man. He said I should keep out of it. He said I had made a mistake." "Did he threaten you?" I asked. There was a pause. "He did not swear," she said. "He did not shout. He was polite. That was what frightened me. Politeness is often the worst sign. It suggests planning." "Miss Havers," I said, "listen to me. You have done the right thing. If anyone telephones again, you tell them you have spoken to your barrister. That will spoil their appetite." "And if they come?" she whispered. "They will not," I said, though I was less certain than I sounded. "And if they do, you telephone the police and demand a reference number. Make them write it down. They like writing things down when it suits them." She gave a small, shaky laugh, and then stopped herself. "I do not want to go to court," she said. "I know," I replied. "But if you do not, an innocent man may be convicted. You will carry that longer than any fear." There was silence. Then, in a very small voice, she said, "All right." When I put down the receiver, Henry looked as if he wanted to be sick. "They are leaning on her," he said. "They are attempting to," I replied. "The trouble with leaning on timid people is that they sometimes stand up." I went to Pomeroy's that evening with the air of a man seeking calm, and the knowledge that calm is not sold there. Travers was at the bar, as if London had appointed him to appear when needed. He nodded at me. "They have been making calls," he said without introduction. "Markham is worried." "Good," I replied. "Worry is the beginning of honesty." Travers drank, then spoke quietly. "Latchford has been seen near your witness," he said. "Not close, not obvious, just there." I felt my jaw tighten. "Then we must make it obvious," I said. "You cannot prove it," Travers replied. "Perhaps not," I said. "But we can frighten the right people with the idea that we might." Travers watched me for a moment, then nodded, as if acknowledging a familiar tactic. "Markham is not just noisy," he said. "He is connected. He is the kind of man who believes rules are for other people. And my client is the kind of man who believes apologizing will help," I said. "London is full of misunderstandings." I returned home late, which is to say, at the hour Hilda regards as a personal insult. Nick was in the sitting-room, reading a brochure about bathrooms with the concentration of a man preparing for a trial of his own. Hilda looked at me as I entered. "Rumpole," she said, "Nick says we should have a new shower." "A new shower," I repeated. "Our shower is perfectly adequate. It makes one wet." Nick looked up. "It is about quality of life," he said. "Quality of life," I replied, "is what men talk about, when they cannot improve it by being nicer." Hilda's eye warned me again. "Do not quarrel," she said. "I am not quarrelling," I replied. "I am merely defending the status quo. It is my profession." Later, alone, I read through Miss Havers' statement again. I read it like a summing up, searching for anything that could be attacked. A frightened woman, a big man, a loud man, a metal post. It was simple, it was credible, it was the sort of truth that does not glitter, which is why liars fear it. Somewhere in a police station A slip of paper had vanished into a pocket, a drawer, a bin, or a conscience. I did not know where, but I knew this. When the Crown cannot find its paperwork, it will try to find a scapegoat, and I had no intention of letting that scapegoat be Terry Biddle. Chapter 9. The Silent Post. On the first morning of trial, the Old Bailey corridor smelled of wet coats, nervous aftershave, and the faint, stubborn hope that someone might agree to a plea and go away. Henry appeared at my elbow with the file and the look of a man who had been awake since the reign of Queen Victoria. "Mr. Rumpole, sir," he whispered. "The witness is here, Miss Havers. She is very pale." "Pale is an excellent colour for honesty," I said. "It makes liars look over-decorated." "And Mr. Jarvis is here as well," Henry added. "He keeps asking if he can leave." "Tell him he can leave after he has helped save a man," I said. "It is a good reason to miss lunch." Claude Erskine Brown arrived, gleaming. He nodded to me as though I were part of the furniture, and he had no strong objection to my presence. "Rumpole," he said, "I see you have collected a few local enthusiasts." "I have collected people who were there," I replied. "It is a habit of mine." Claude's eyes flicked toward Miss Havers, who was standing with her bag clutched as if it were a shield. "She looks uncertain," he observed. "She looks sensible," I said. "The Old Bailey is not a place that encourages confidence." We went into court. The judge was the same as before, brisk and watchful. He regarded the list as a personal insult, and the bar as the source of it. Claude opened with the smooth certainty of a man reading from a script he likes. "My lord, members of the jury," he began, "this is a straightforward case. The complainant, Mr. Jason Markham, was assaulted. He suffered actual bodily harm. The defendant admitted striking him." I rose. "My lord," I said, "the defense case is also straightforward, but rather less convenient. The defendant is a night bus driver. He was struck first. He said foolish things in interview after a double shift. And the complainant's injury is consistent with an impact against a street fixture rather than a punch." The judge frowned slightly, as if I had suggested the law might be complicated. Claude called his complainant first, as the Crown always does when it wishes to put outrage on display before facts have time to breathe. Mr. Jason Markham walked into the witness box with the confident gait of a man who expects the world to apologize for inconveniencing him. His suit was sharp, his expression was wounded. His nose bore the faint signs of a healed injury and a continuing grievance. Claude led him gently, like a proud owner showing a dog. "Tell the court what happened," Claude said. Markham described a late night, the kebab shop, the defendant standing about, the insult, the sudden blow. "He hit me," Markham declared. "He just hit me. I did nothing." Claude invited the jury to share Markham's astonishment that anyone should touch him without permission. Then he sat down and looked at me as if to say, "You see, the world is simple." I rose slowly. One should always rise slowly for a witness like Markham. It gives him time to enjoy his own importance. "Mr. Markham," I said, "you are a man used to getting your way." "I am a man used to being respected," he replied. "Indeed," I said. "And if you are not respected, you raise your voice until the world gives in." A ripple moved in the jury. Markham's cheeks coloured. "I am not here to be insulted," he said. "No," I agreed. "You are here to be questioned. It is less flattering." I began gently, as one does, before applying pressure. "You had been out that evening," I said. "A late supper, a drink." "I had one drink," he said at once, too quickly. "One," I repeated. "A modest number." He frowned. "I am careful," he said. "Careful enough to approach a tired bus driver at midnight and start an argument," I suggested. "I did not start anything," he snapped. "He bumped into me." "Where?" I asked. "Outside the shop," he said. "And you suffered a broken nose," I said. "From a punch." "Yes," he said. I looked down at my notes. "In your statement you said he punched you with his right fist," I said. "That is right," Markham replied. "Later, in your interview, you said you were not sure which hand," I said. "It happened fast," he said. "And then," I went on, "you said it might have been an elbow." Markham stared. "I did not say that," he protested. "You did," I said, and I watched him as I gave the exact words. "You said, 'Perhaps it was his elbow.' Do you remember saying that?" He hesitated, and in that hesitation you could hear the jury listening. "I might have said something like that," he conceded. "Because," I said, "you were not looking carefully. You were shouting." "I was shocked," he said. "I was attacked." "Let us talk about your shock," I said. "Did you stumble?" "No," he said. "Did you step backwards?" I asked. "I may have moved," he said, irritated. "Did you strike anything as you moved?" I asked. Claude rose. "My lord, this is speculation," he said. "The witness has said he was punched." The judge looked at me. "Mr. Rumpole, get to the point," he said. "I am at the point, my lord," I replied. "It is a metal post." The judge's mouth tightened. "Proceed," he said. Markham's eyes narrowed, trying to see the trap. "I did not hit a post," he said. "So your nose broke in mid-air," I suggested. "An unfortunate trick." He flushed. "He punched me," he insisted. I stepped closer, not crowding him, but letting my voice drop so he had to listen. "Mr. Markham," I said, "do you know a man called Derek Latchford?" His eyes flicked, just for a moment, toward the back of the court. That flicker was worth more than most statements. "No," he said. "I suggest you do," I replied. "A large man, dark coat, paid to stand near you." Claude was on his feet at once. "My lord," he said, "this is outrageous." "Outrage," I said, "is the complainant's area." The judge held up a hand. "Mr. Rumpole," he said sharply, "unless you have evidence, you will not drag names through my court." "My lord," I said, "I have witnesses who saw a large man strike the defendant before any alleged assault by my client. The complainant may not enjoy the name. That is not my fault." The judge stared at me for a long moment, then spoke to Claude. "The Crown will have to deal with it," he said. "If there is another man, I want to know why he is not before the court." Claude's face tightened, as though he had been told to do a piece of work. Markham shifted his weight, and the confidence began to leak out of him. "You were angry," I said. "You were making a scene. You went towards my client." "I went to tell him to watch where he was going," he said. "And you touched him," I suggested. "I might have put my hand on him," he said quickly. "Only to restrain." "Restrain," I repeated. "A very fashionable word for starting a fight." A juror smiled. Markham saw it and looked furious. "One last matter," I said. "When the police interviewed you, did you tell them there was another man there with you?" "There was no one," he said. "Not even the large man you do not know," I said. "I do not know what you are talking about," he snapped. I nodded, as though satisfied. "Thank you, Mr. Markham," I said. "You have been very helpful in the way some people are, without meaning to be." When I sat down, Henry leaned in, whispering as though in church. "Mr. Rumpole, sir," he said. He looked at the back of the court. "I know," I whispered back. "Now we must see who was sitting there." The judge called for the next witness. Claude began to look less pleased with the world. Miss Havers sat outside, waiting to be called, pale and brave. Jarvis fiddled with his hands, longing to become invisible again. I glanced once toward the public benches. A broad-shouldered man in a dark coat had been there earlier. Now he was not. The Old Bailey, I reflected, is full of exits. The difficulty is persuading the truth to use one of them. Chapter 10. The Verdict and the Modest Glass. By the time the second day of trial began, The case had acquired that special flavour the Old Bailey reserves for situations in which the truth has refused to behave. Claude looked tired. Not physically, of course. Claude would rather collapse elegantly than appear rumpled. But the smooth conviction in his face had begun to crack at the edges, like a cheap ornament. The judge, on the other hand, looked more alert than before. Judges enjoy nothing so much as a case that threatens to become awkward. It gives them the chance to appear stern. Miss Havers was called first. She walked to the witness box as though she were approaching a ledge. She sat down carefully, kept both hands on her bag in her lap, and looked straight ahead, refusing to meet anyone's eye for too long. Claude rose. "Miss Havers," he began gently, "you were at the bus stop late that evening?" "Yes," she said. "It was dark," Claude went on. "Yes," she repeated. "And you were some distance away from the men?" "Not far," she said. "I was waiting at the stop." Claude smiled the smile of a man laying down cushions before pushing. "You were frightened," he suggested. "I was concerned," she replied. "There was shouting." "So you cannot be sure what you saw," Claude said. Miss Havers inhaled, and I saw her grip her bag tighter, as if holding herself in place. "I am sure," she said, "because I remember thinking, this is about to get worse." Claude's eyebrows lifted, as though she had surprised him by possessing a spine. "You say," Claude continued, "that you saw a man strike the defendant before any incident with my complainant." "Yes," she said. "A large man in a dark coat." Claude held up his hands. "A large man," he repeated. "In London, at night. That could be anyone." "It was him," she said, and her voice steadied. "He came from the other man, from Mr. Markham." Claude's mouth tightened, as though he had tasted vinegar. "You did not know Mr. Markham?" he said. "No," she replied. "But I recognized him later. And you say," Claude went on, "that Mr. Markham's injury was caused by a post, not a punch." "I saw him stumble," she said. "He stepped back. He hit the post. I heard it. Then he held his face." "You did not see a nose break," Claude said, pouncing. "You did not see bone." "I saw blood," she replied, "and I did not see the bus driver punch him." Claude turned slightly, appealing to the jury. "You were upset," he said. "You may have misunderstood the movement." "I did not misunderstand," she said. "I was watching because I wanted to know when to leave." Claude paused, and then delivered what he thought was the decisive blow. "You claim you reported this to the police," he said. "Yet the police have no record of you." Miss Havers's eyes flicked toward me for an instant, then back to Claude. "I spoke to an officer," she said. "He told me to write my name and number. I did. He put it in his pocket." Claude raised his eyebrows. "A pocket," he said lightly. "Convenient." "I did not choose his pocket," she said, and there was a small ripple in the court. Even the judge's mouth twitched, though he tried to stop it. Claude sat down, displeased. I rose. "Miss Havers," I said, "you have been clear. Tell the jury, in simple words, what the defendant did." She looked at Terry, who sat in the dock with his hands folded, as if apologizing for taking up space. "He tried to avoid it," she said. "He tried to get away. He looked tired. He did not look like a man who wanted a fight." "And the large man?" I asked. "He started it," she said. "He hit the bus driver first." "And Mr. Markham?" I asked. "He was shouting," she replied. "He came in angry. He made it worse." "Thank you," I said. "That will do." She climbed down and almost ran from the witness box, not from guilt, but from relief. Honest people often move quickly once they have done the hard part. Jarvis came next, and his evidence was read in the careful, reluctant voice of a man who would rather be anywhere else. He confirmed Terry's split lip before the alleged assault. He confirmed the incident report. He confirmed the existence of the copy of the recording. He confirmed, as best he could, that Terry had described a large man in a dark coat. Claude tried to suggest Jarvis was guessing. Jarvis responded with the stubbornness of a man who has filled in too many forms to enjoy imagination. Then Claude called the interviewing officer. A police officer in the witness box always believes he is on home ground. He wears the confident posture of someone who has seen frightened men answer questions and mistaken it for victory. Claude led him through his evidence. The admission, the confession, the clear words. Then I stood. "Officer," I said, "you interviewed the defendant after he had worked a double shift." "He appeared fit," the officer replied. "Fit to drive a bus," I said, "or fit to defend himself in a legal interview." He answered questions. The officer said, "Yes," I agreed. "He answered them in the way you wanted." I turned to the tape transcript. "You asked," I said, "so you hit him." And he replied, "I pushed him off. That is correct?" The officer looked cautious. "That is correct," he said. "And you then said, 'So you accept you struck him?'" I continued. The officer hesitated. "I was clarifying," he said. "You were translating," I replied, "into a stronger language." Claude rose. "My lord," he began. The judge held up a hand. "Let him ask," he said to Claude with irritation. "This is important." I returned to the transcript. The defendant said, "I want legal advice." I read. The officer shifted slightly. "And you replied?" I went on. "We can sort that later. Let's just get this over with." The officer's cheeks reddened. "It was late," he said. "He wanted to go home." "Of course he did," I replied. "So did you." "I did not deny him advice," the officer said. "You discouraged it," I replied, "because it would slow down your neat story." Claude rose again, but the judge silenced him with a look that could curdle milk. I took a breath. "Officer," I said, "a witness, Miss Havers, says she gave her details to an officer that night. She wrote her name and number on a slip of paper. Are you saying she did not?" "I have no knowledge," he replied quickly. "Is it your practice," I asked, "to keep witness details?" "Yes," he said. "And is it your practice," I asked, "to keep them in your pocket?" There was a pause. It was not long, but it was long enough. "Sometimes," he admitted. "And is it possible," I said, "that a slip of paper could go missing?" "It is possible," he said grudgingly. "So it is possible," I said, "that the police lost the one witness who did not suit the confession." Claude looked as if he wanted to sink through the floor. The judge called a brief adjournment. When we returned, the atmosphere had changed. The jury had the look juries acquire when they are beginning to suspect they have been invited to accept a story because it is tidy. In my closing speech, I did not perform. I merely pointed. "Members of the jury," I said, "this case began with a tired man trying to get home. It continued with a complainant who believed anger equals truth. It was sealed, the Crown says, by an admission. But you have heard the tape. You have heard how questions can do the talking. You have heard how legal advice was treated as an inconvenience. You have heard a witness, Miss Havers, who has no reason to lie. She did not come for attention. She came because she could not bear the idea of an innocent man paying for the comfort of others. She saw a large man strike first. She saw Mr. Markham stumble back into a metal post. You have seen how convenient it is for witness details to vanish when they are unhelpful. This is not a case about a broken nose. It is a case about how easily the law can break the wrong man if we allow it." The jury went out. They returned quicker than Henry likes. Henry prefers long deliberations. He believes they show respect for his file. The foreman stood. "Not guilty," he said. Terry Biddle made a sound that might have been a sob or a laugh. It was simply release. Claude sat very still, wearing the expression of a man whose claret has been replaced with disinfectant. Outside the court, Terry thanked me with the kind of gratitude that makes a barrister feel briefly embarrassed. "I did not mean to say those things," he said. "No," I replied. "You meant to be polite. Do not do it in police stations." Miss Havers slipped away without fuss. I was glad she had done enough. I returned to Froxbury Mansions to find she who must be obeyed waiting. "Well?" she asked. "Acquitted," I said. "That is your job," she replied, as if I had announced I had remembered to breathe. "Nick says the bathroom quotation is reasonable." "The jury," I said, "also said something reasonable today. It is not a common event." She gave me her look. "Do not be difficult," she said. "I am never difficult," I replied. "I am merely consistent." Later, at Pomeroy's, I raised a modest glass of Chateau Thames Embankment to Terry Biddle, who had learned that confessions can be forced without violence, to Miss Havers, who had learned that courage can be quiet, and to the metal post, which had done more honest work than many men in authority. "The world is too much with us," I murmured, and took a sip. "In my experience, so are helpful confessions." Thank you for spending this evening with me on Old Bailey Stories. If you have enjoyed Rumpole and the Unhelpful Confession, then please take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you like what I am doing here. A subscription should never be a forced confession. Tell us where you are and what time it is in the comments. And if you have ever had the misfortune to be helped into saying something you did not quite mean, then you may also tell us that the law is full of tidy stories. Life rarely is. As for Terry Biddle, he went back to his night bus with a split lip healed and a sharper respect for silence in police stations. Miss Havers returned to her careful routines, having discovered that decency is sometimes an act of rebellion. And Claude Erskine Brown, I imagine, went in search of a dinner where he could explain that the jury had failed to appreciate the obvious. I returned, as I always do, to she who must be obeyed, who is never impressed by acquittals and remains firm on bathrooms, curtains, and the general unreliability of her husband. In matters domestic, there is no appeal court. Now, if you are still awake, switch off the remaining lights, finish your modest glass of Chateau Thames Embankment, and be grateful you are not spending the night on a plastic chair under strip lights, being invited to be helpful. Until next time, good night.